controlling the masses. And now, broadcasting live from our near-Earth hub studio, we bring you this NBN special report.
Hello and welcome to day 2 of the Circuit Breaker Invitational, the largest invitational tournament, most competitive invitational tournament of the Netrunner calendar year. I'm Not Yeti, and I'm joined by, in person, my esteemed co-host, the UK regional champion, judge of the World's Finals, and the person who taught me to play Netrunner. It's Cobra Bubbles.
Good morning, Kota Kalimantan. How are we?
And then down the line, we're joined by the People's Champion, top of Swiss at Worlds 2024, one of the most competitive Netrunner players in the world. It's Jai.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? And I do wish people would stop calling me that.
He's retired. He's now full-time commentary, if you watch the Metropole Grid.
Man.
You guys excited?
Andre gave me a year full about that, but yeah, that's another story.
How are you feeling? Ready for this top 16?
Yeah, hi.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The thing that strikes me immediately, looking at these new pie charts that they've added to Cobra, is that 50% Wayland that we see on the corp side. I was not expecting that going into this tournament.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's a bit of a surprise, but Orb is a deck I've always said it can win any game and it can lose any game. And the same, it seems, is true for the other winner identities that are being played, primarily the outfit, and some spicy BTL that we might get to see later. So yeah, some players won some games with Wayland. They managed to come out ahead, which is very exciting.
And a little more tragically, we see on the other side an almost 50-50 split for both of the runner factions in the tournament. So
it's all two runner factions.
Both runner factions are represented.
Yeah, there's always one player playing a mini faction in the big cut. That's how it goes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what I remember from the old days.
It used to be Adam, now it's Criminal. And yeah, I'm feeling really excited. The three of us are going to be here for the first 3 rounds of this double elimination top cut. For anybody who doesn't know how this works, there are 16 players left in the tournament. They've played through 3 different Swiss pods to make top 5 in some of the kind of fiercest and toughest cuts that we've seen in a long time. And now they are playing a double elimination tournament, which means that if they lose 2 games across the whole day, they are out. And only one player will be left at the end of the day, and they will be crowned our Circuit Breaker. The Circuit Breaker is the person who doesn't lose 2 games, and those games will be randomly, or will be paired up through the day. Let me show you our initial bracket. Which I believe is here. So these are our 16 competitors, and they will fight their way through. Their side 1 picks were decided by placement, I believe.
Yeah, so it's what they call it, seeding, based on how they finished. The seeding for this tournament was switched around slightly to avoid players from the same pods playing against each other too much.
Yes.
And to avoid what they were calling the APAC ellipse, where all the APAC players would have ended up playing each other in the first round. So they've switched it around slightly, but the same is true. If you finished in the top half of the bracket, or the top half of your pod, or you are the reigning circuit breaker, you get to pick this side for the first round.
And that's a big deal because not only have you do you get to pick whichever matchup is favoured. In this tournament, or not something that I've known in my history of playing competitive netrunner, you've had a week to prepare for that matchup, so it could be big. Jai, you're a tiebreaker. That's one of the testing teams. You've got 3 competitors in the tournament today. What's the mood been like for the last week? Has it been really focused on those matchups, nose to the grindstone, or trying to keep cool, calm, and collected?
Well, I think the mood has been pretty reasonable. Somewhat frenetic first couple of days of like matchup side testing, as it usually is. Though I think it tapered off a little bit towards the end of the week, and then yesterday there was kind of the mood of, oh no, like the homework's due tomorrow. What are we going to do now?
That makes
I think
a lot of
most
sense.
people are pretty happy with the sides that they've been dealt, at least going to this first round.
Interesting. Yeah, we had Code Bowls and I are both players for the team EA Sports. So if you sense a bit of rivalry between us and Jai on this stream, you'll know why. And yeah, we had a pretty similar thing. I was there on Monday, caught the train up to Cambridge to do some in-person testing with Kikai, and yeah, a bit nervy, but a lot of practice has happened in this last week, I think. Which is going to make for quite an interesting one, and then all of that planning will basically disintegrate by the time we've hit like round 3, because if you try and do your like seed or your path predictions in this format, because you don't know necessarily what side you're going to play in each round, it basically becomes impossible to predict who or what you're going to be playing against. So yeah, do we want to take a look at some of the deck lists?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I think players are now going to their tables, so we'll be getting started quite shortly. But we can throw up some deck lists real quick for the first match we're going to see.
Yeah, so our first match should be, let me switch over, we should be watching Benvelopment versus The King. Now, which side do we know? Jai, you'll know this. Do you know which sides are being played for this matchup?
I believe that it will be the King's Asa group against Benvelopment's Kit. This will be Inversificator Kit.
Yeah. Let's start with this kit list then. What are your initial thoughts, Jai?
So my first thought is, of course, that this Benvelopment might be like one of the few people in the world who is playing this kit ID without what most people would consider the signature card, right? Spark of Inspiration, instead of opting for Inversificator in a traditional Breaker suite. And I think against like the ice white, but not necessarily ice thick ice lineup of the Asa group deck list, it has like certain ramifications in that, yes, Inversificator can't let you like tunnel through like a 2 or even 3 deep server, like just riding along on a single ice as you would normally do, but like getting to swap around, for example, like a Gatekeeper or drafting one of those like small to medium sized ice can be very good for Kit for checking multiple remotes in turn.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of that. There are some important cards in this list, and it will be very interesting to see how this goes. But there's also, with 3 Bravado, 3 Burner, there's going to be a lot of kind of raw power coming out of Kit, I think. And then in terms of, very quickly, if we talk about the Kings list, this is an asset group that I played some of during the week, and I was surprised by, most notably, 2 Malia, which is a real... Oh, interesting. We might actually be watching a different matchup. I will... which one do you guys want to watch? I was interested in Bridgeman's game. Bridgeman is playing a deck that was pretty hype when we saw bits of it on stream last week. If you guys are up for that.
Yeah, for sure. That deck really surprised a lot of people, I think. You see Bridgman and his association with the Built to Last deck that won Worlds 23 and then did very well at Worlds 24, which is a much slower, more glacier deck. And this deck has a few surprises in it from what we saw on stream last weekend.
Yeah, let me very quickly bring up the deck list just before our players get started. So, Bridgman's list, if you look at this, Wayland, and it will be quick, the first thing you'll notice is the Eminent Domain Archer combo. So, by scoring this 3-1 agenda, we're able to pull out an Archer from the deck, res without sacrificing an agenda. But also, there's all sorts of fun tricks in here. I saw last week Bridgman score a send a message on a Tucana to also pull an Archer out of the deck without sacrificing an agenda by ordering the triggers in the right way. We've got O-Birth Protocol as well, which can also again be popped with Eminent Domain, or you can just sacrifice one of those 1-pointers to get it. There's a lot of really interesting lines.
Or Standoff.
Stand off.
3 copies of the 2-0 with the famously bad text templating from the Red Sand cycle.
I'm just going to move us straight over into the game as our players get underway. So, in turn 1, Bridgman has ISIS remote, double ISIS remote, and installed a card in the root of that server. Now, what card do you think is in server 1 that you can afford to go down to 4 credits to get the double ice in?
I mean, Rashida would be the usual assumption.
It was an Eminent Domain.
Eminent Domain. That was going to be my second guess, for what it's worth.
Amarum played the price, got a cleaver, and is able to just run this server. So you've got to think that maybe the Bridgman's feeling a little sad about some ice walls there.
Yeah, I think Cleaver might have been probably the best hit for Amarum of this turn 1 the price. Given the specific composition of Bridgman's ice suite, it looks like the only ice that would keep out Amarum on a turn 1 Cleaver install would be the single Hortum, I believe, especially on the remote. Right? I don't think you'd expect to see like Winchesters on server 1 on turn 1, especially.
Yeah, so I think you can make a fair read that that's a border control on the remote there somewhere. That was the plan to defend that Eminent if the Cleaver hadn't been hit. Instead, we have a standoff score.
Which is pretty exciting. We get that Largo trigger that's going to be pretty consistent card draw.
Oh, not anymore. It's gone to the standoff.
And interesting, Bridgman not deciding to trash any of this ice to get that standoff value. So it's a bit hard to read on stream because of how small this text is. But standoff essentially should read, in most cases, draw a card again, 5 credits. But not the case. We just trashed the Largo, which is very interesting. But we have already got through 10 cards of the deck, so maybe we're feeling alright.
Yeah, I mean, I played a deck quite similar to Amarum's last weekend. And personally, I love the Largo and I'm trying to hold on to it for dear life, but I'm not in the top cut, so Amarum has different ideas.
And what is the nature of Amarum's Hoshiko deck here? Because there are a lot of variations going around.
Yeah, so this is what's typically known as mulch, which is a phrase popularised by the QTM players around Worlds 23 to describe virus-based Anarch decks, primarily Hoshiko, which are playing cards like Cookbook, which you can see now, to make their virus cards into powerful and flexible effects that let them attack the corp from a number of angles. So we just see a Botulus getting the heap, so you can use viruses to break ice. We have a Fermenter, you can use viruses to make money. Lots of applications for those virus counters in the deck. And generally the idea is to quote-unquote mulch your deck, so to just throw as much of it in the heap as fast as you can, and then you can recur the pieces you need later with cards like Labour Rights and Symbol Chip.
But
what's interesting to me... Go on.
No, you
go. Okay. So what's interesting to me is that we saw, like, as you say, the Hoshiko mulch decks rise up in the wake of Worlds 2023, and then eventually there was the slightly more streamlined and arguably more popular Lu version that popped up shortly after that. that I believe did quite well. Didn't win, but did very well at CBI 2024, almost exactly a year ago now. And I'm just wondering, now that we are starting to see the return of Mount Hoshiko, even in the wake of like the Notguri bannings, what is the reason we are seeing it back on Hoshiko instead of like the Lu variations?
That's interesting. Just worth noting, Bridgeman took a long time to think there before install, advance, gaining that credit from the BTL, and playing the hedge fund. Now, we have to respect Archer on this board state, and there's a few ways that there's a lot of ways this could go, with Hoshiko kind of able to pull programs and ice-breaking equipment out of thin air, and that single chip, that's the way we see that happen most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get a look at the heap here, there's a Botulus ready to go, which will at least diffuse an Archer because it will get an extra counter from the cookbook. And there's an Audrey as well, but again, you're only breaking 2 subroutines with either of those options. So the Archer would still presumably end the run here.
But we could potentially just save a cleaver on an Archer face check as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, to return to Jai's question, I think there is some it's hotly contested whether...
Surveyor,
never mind.
Ooh.
That's the ice now better known as being the name of a blog these days. Is seeing some occasional play, but it's getting Botulist here, and that's a big steal.
And the class set comes down.
Wow. Okay, I really want to talk with Jai about why this deck is better in Hoshiko than in Lu, but this game is not giving us any time.
But no, continue on that thought. What do you think?
Well, so I've had this argument several times with other members of EA Sports.
There's a lot of people who at Norwich Pub Run are fans of Lu.
People love Lu, and not incorrectly. It's a very attractive young man. But yeah, the Hoshiko just gives you that like early game consistency. The Lu deck will find Imp in most games because it's 40 cards, but in the games where you don't have Imp on turn 1, you're not drawing cards as consistently, right? And the thing that the deck needs is to get through the early game into... Once it has its Largo set up, its Class Act, maybe as we see here, its Kiko, its Cookbook, it's the pieces of the engine. You need to get them in play to have that unstoppable late game that the deck is trying to create. And I think Hoshiko just smooths you out to getting there more easily and makes you a little bit of money along the way as well if you're managing your flips well.
And we see here back in the game, Bridgeman re-jamming back in the...
Yeah. Which, and I correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe this Bridgeman list has any significant tag punishment, right? So there's only really one relevant subroutine on this surveyor. So this botch list should get us through. I guess it won't get us through twice.
Yes, and I suspect that's what probably Bridgeman is counting on. I mean, the alternative is this could just be a NGO front brush just to burn the one botulus counter and force Amarum maybe to clear some tags to protect his cookbook.
Yeah, there are a lot of options for this here. Right? I think you could, install double advance behind 2 ice. Any netrunner player immediately reads that as a 5-3 agenda, right? Which would be the game here if Amarum can touch it. So you're tempting Amarum to come and run here. Obviously, Amarum has to think, as they are thinking, as they've said in the chat. What are the other options? And the obvious ones are NGO front, or this is an eminent domain disguised as a larger agenda that's going to get scored next turn with 2 clicks spare. Fetch something from the deck and give Bridgeman potentially a really powerful setup turn.
I mean, yeah.
And it is worth... Yeah.
It's just worth saying that like this Hoshiko deck can just produce the answers, and with a 9-card hand, like I wouldn't feel confident in any kind of push in this server, any real one.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if this was an agenda worth more than 1 point, but Bridgeman is famously excellent netrunner player, and part of the way you get there is by making the plays your opponents don't expect you to make.
That is true.
It looks whether we'll see the border control pop here or not, and we'll see a border control pop. So Amarum can, maybe just reinstall another Simul chip on Botulus and get back in here if he wishes. And it's worth noting that he is on game point. The score is 4-0, so like another 5-3 excess here is the game.
Wow, okay. So we had the Simul chip. We had the opportunity to get into that server if we wanted it, and we decided against.
So would Bridgeman pop the border control to save...
Oh, and it was the game-winning agenda. Wow.
What a line. Okay.
So we do hit the cleaver and immediately pop the Simul chip to save it. or to save something.
Yeah, we're thinking about this symbol chip here. Notably, between the various self-mill effects in the Shiko deck, we've got all 3 symbol chips in the heap already, which is something that you should be setting off alarm bells usually for multiplayers.
And 2 Laborites.
The 2 Laborites as well.
And the buffer drive.
So that last Laborites is actually really important. And if it's not already in Amarum's hand, he's going to be really reluctant about triggering this Largo in case he mills it and then has no recursion and no late game.
We see the Imp coming down. Imp is really the card that drives the inevitable late game, or this Audrey Imp combo really. What this is going to mean is that Bridgeman, who still only has 1 res piece of ice, which is Botulist, is going to be losing pieces from hand until he can shore up HQ, and that's going to be very difficult against this AI breaker. You really are looking to set up a board state where you can ice all centrals, then purge maybe, but that's going to give the Hashiko a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably Bridgman's best draw here would be an NGO front as a way of just making a lot of money with relatively few clicks from the 1 credit he has to get him started on that game plan. But we're clicking to draw.
It is a difficult position to be looking at across from, but definitely not over yet. The Bridgeman, worth talking about these 2 players. We kind of jumped straight into this game and didn't get a lot of opportunity. Bridgeman is one of maybe the most decorated players in this field, with like multiple notable high placing finishes. I believe he was Intercontinental champion at one point. He's had many Worlds Top Cut finishes. Maybe
yeah,
more
famously
than
5 top cuts at Worlds in a row between 2023 and 2019, I guess that would be.
I think so. We're running this remote server. The Paladin's coming down, so we're going to have that Keiko Paladin credit kind of drip feed.
Yeah, you get 2 free credits a turn basically from those 2 cards together, plus 2 MU. It's pretty good.
It's not bad. And yeah, we see the border control and hedge funds going back into the deck. NGO front sniped out of HQ is probably very sad for Bridgman.
Yeah, this is definitely it's a credit trash, not using the imp counter, conserving for a future turn. Bridgman just going and jamming again.
And as Kerbals, as you say, we're declining to use Largo now as we're looking to try and get that last labor rights. Stall advance. Now, it's pretty fair to say that at this point, Amarum can get in wherever he wants, and Bridgman knows that. So it's more of a question of what can you put in there to waste resources, push your tempo forward, all of that. Those are good questions. Countering.
I mean, the unfortunate fact of the matter is that Audrey, like the presence of this Audrey and the fact there's only 1 ice on this remote means that the resource expenditure, as you say, for Amarum to check this remote every turn also is not going to be very high at all. So Bridgman is going to have a very uphill task trying to craft some kind of server that he can push behind.
Yeah, and we see that twinning coming down, so the central's pressure is going to also start to really ramp up. But Bridgman did get those 9 credits that he was looking for. What do we have any kind of virus tech in Bridgman's list? Are we looking at Mavirus? Are we looking at Magnet? Is there any of that?
Nope. Not at all. The influence is all Mesner Chesfo, Spin Doctor, and BioVault, famous BTL tech, which works particularly well with our birth protocol, which is an interaction from the Red Sand cycle. Both of those cards have been in standard for a very long time. And I think Bridgman might be the first person to realise that BioVault and a birth protocol work so well together, which is quite exciting. There's a lot of still to do in this standard card pool, even though it's been a while since we've had changes.
Oh my, that's an Archer res.
Archer res, but we have the Audrey counters, we have the Bottas counters. We are going to get through this without losing any programs. But we do go down to that 1 hand size. The twinning, we see a hedge fund, we see a BioVault. That's 2 more trashes. Bridgman's hand now with 1 card in hand. Mandatory draw.
And I mean, it does look kind of miserable for Bridgman now, and it does really beg the question. Since Bridgman was, I believe, is that right? Was Bridgman no, Amarum was the higher seed. Okay, that explains a lot. as to
Yeah, Amarum was the highest seed in this matchup. Amarum placed first in the APAC pod. I believe maintaining a clean sheet over the course of 7 rounds.
yes.
And yeah, Bridgeman came in via the EMEA pod.
Yeah, and made it in on tiebreakers in 4th, I believe, in that pod.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I can't imagine very many scenarios where someone would put themselves into this kind of situation voluntarily.
Yeah, I don't think it matters what corp deck I would be playing. I don't want to play against a Sashiko deck, regardless.
Yeah, I've been putting Not Yeti through the grinder a little bit, testing this deck the past couple of months. But yeah, I do think a lot of this game actually will come back in hindsight to that turn 1 price into cleaver.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just the Anarch way. You just play your I don't know what I'm going to get tool, and you hit the thing you need.
And yeah, we've got some questions. I mean, just at this point, you can keep HQ kind of swept, keep everything out, or you can start spending these twinning counts on R&D and just try and close out the game, stealing one of the... I assume there are 3 or 4 more agendas. It's too early in the morning for my brain to do the maths it needs.
There's 3 more 5/3 agendas, which is what Amarum is really looking for. And we see the 3rd Laborite's coming down, shuffling back 2 Laborites and a Simon chip. I don't know where that came from.
Okay, so yeah, them having drawn that is a big boon there, because one of Bridgman's ways out of this game would have been somehow that card getting lost somewhere, and suddenly this March deck just fully stalls when it runs out of stack, which with the Laborites is no longer going to happen.
And Laborites is one of the cards that is rotating with the release of the next set, which is called
Elevation.
And I think that will be one of the major ones for Anarch. I think a lot of the successful Anarch archetypes, or almost every successful Anarch deck I can think of from the last year or so, has been playing some number of copies of it. So
yeah, it's a inherently extremely powerful card. It's it's a card that looks like it's sort of a consistency card, fix what's in your deck, sort yourself out, but really it has the secret text. Play this when your deck runs out, search for 3 cards, and you get to use those cards over the next couple of turns, guaranteed, which is obviously extremely powerful, especially at 0 cost, and especially when you can use it to get more copies of itself, so that you're getting even more specific cards of your choice in the late stages of the game, as we see here. So that will be a big change to Anarch, I think, and maybe really make those tools like the price, which are a little bit more inconsistent on their face, actually that inconsistent in real play.
Bridgman's bought himself a couple turns with that purge, that manual purge that he did a little while back. But this Botulus on HQ is starting to rebuild up, and that twinning is charging as well. So I imagine that he's trying to engineer some kind of solution for the twinning sweep that's, I assume, Amarum is going to be planning in short order.
Yeah, I think Amrum's played this last couple of turns since the purge quite patiently. Sometimes when you get purges of virus deck, the temptation is to just start running, try and find stuff that you can trash manually to get your Audrey going, even though your imp is now blank. But Amarum didn't do that. They patiently used their Laborites. They're playing some setup. They've got Fermented ticking. And yeah, he's going to really execute some kind of plan that he's been building up to over the next couple of turns, starting with this HQ run.
So we're breaking 3 of the subs. Are we going to allow... We are going to allow Bridgeman to gain 2 credits. Very polite. And then we're going to see the imp come down.
Install.
3 cards from HQ. Biovolt. Manually trashed. Tucana manually trashed. Eminent Domain. So Bridgeman now back down to 1 card in hand.
Yeah, notably that...
Although the good news is not necessarily closer to winning the game.
Exactly.
But it is Bridgeman further away from winning the game. He himself pretty much needs to score all of those Eminent Domains.
That's true, yeah. Bridgman's ideal pattern from here would be to find and score the 3rd and final Eminent Domain to somehow secure the last 5/3. But it's going to be difficult now that all these Audrey counters are back. I wonder if he'll consider manually purging again.
The Archer at least does cost 2 audio counters, which often you're getting 1 back on a run. That might be less true now with the twinning and the number of trash balls we've seen out of Bridgman's deck. But you must expect that there must be a lot of ice in this deck, right? And Bridgman surely, it looks like he's not drawn that much of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's at least 2 more border controls. Massively chest voles, very classic in BTL.
The interaction here between cookbook and symbol chip is really, really important, right? Symbol chip allowing you to recur any program from your heap for the cost of trashing one of these freshly purged. The revolver coming down is big news.
Yeah, absolutely. This gives you a way just through the archer, irrespective of how many virus counters you have, if you have enough credits, which is going to be potentially pretty important if Bridgman's plan was to keep HQ safe for at least a couple of turns.
Yeah, notably it's 4 credits that you need. We are using the symbol chip. We're fetching. Is the buzzsaw in the bin? You don't love to break a Horton
It
with a
is
buzzsaw.
in the bin. Well, I'm not sure if Amarum wants to be paying through this Horton with credits more than once.
You'd sooner botulus this, I think.
Yeah, Botulus deals with it pretty cleanly. You could also fetch a fresh copy of Audrey, which comes in with a counter thanks to the cookbook, although you might have trashed the first Audrey if that's what you were planning to do. Notably, with these 3 Botulus in play, Amarum is now full up on MU.
We're seeing 3 cards.
We're seeing 3 cards. Trash Rashida.
And that's the game.
And that is the game.
Very, very well played from both players. Now, obviously a lot of that game felt like it came down to quite a bold turn 1, I think, from both players. Double ice on that remote, and then just having the counter to it was a tough situation. Now, it looks like a lot of the games in the round have already finished. Are there... what I'll ask my co-producer to do is look for a game that we might be able to spectate, because there's still quite a lot of time left in the round, am I right?
Yeah, there should be about 15 minutes left in the round.
Okay.
And we have, I think, the game of Sebastian K versus Mr. Sticks. Looks like it could still have a decent amount of play to it. So
Can you just check if we've got permission to draw?
Oh, good idea.
So yeah, and I think for my money, not that necessarily people are asking my opinion on these things, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mulcher Shiko was the strongest deck in the meta right now since the last ban list, with the Shaper bans coming in. It's not sure what happened there.
Yeah, I just had the same bug.
Oh, strange. JNet's misbehaving, but oh well. And so, what board state do we find ourselves in? This is an Arasana versus an Asa group.
Yeah, so we've got Arasana 4 points up here, and
on turn 11.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of time passed. A lot of cards on the table for Asa. Potentially, we've got big fully operations in our near future or our recent past, and there's a conduit on the table which has presumably been purged by one of the 2 Mavirus in archives, but not a great deal of board state for Arasana at the moment, apart from the 7 credits on that Urban Art Vernissage, which could be put to good use potentially.
7 credits is a big number on the UAV. I don't think I've seen that many actually.
Yeah, me neither. I don't remember ever having to use more than 1 D6 to represent my UAV credits.
This is the thing that I always get slightly wrong about UAV, is that it's just used to install programs. It's not Trojans. You have to bounce back the Trojans to
it's better than that. You can use it to install any card.
To install any card?
Yeah. So if you draw a console, for example, that's often the best way to spend those credits. In this case, we've spent them on a Cleaver to challenge this Hagen remote.
Which is a 3 credit break for Cleaver. So for Seb K, definitely doesn't feel like break the bank. Using the Arasana to install an Eka there, just to reduce that cost by 2. Although the Bran is still going to be a pretty hefty cost to break, but we can probably afford it.
Yeah, and Mr. Six spending 6 of his 9 credits remaining to protect this card fresh install and so on. That's not something you normally see in a It's a deck, especially when we see as many fully operationals in archives as we do here. So we'll see what it is exactly that's worth protecting so hard.
Yeah, the usual assumption would be Rashida, right? But it could be an agenda. You're going pretty poor to score it there. It is the third agenda for Seb K.
And using that Simul chip to reinstall the propeller to make the brand break relatively cheap has to feel pretty good. I think we spent a solid 4 credits on that run.
4 credits, yeah. Eva and propeller. It's pretty good.
It's an exchange of resources, though. That's the second Simul chip. And unlike the Alloc deck we just saw, this deck does not have labor rights to recover those Simul chips easily. So there's only so many times it can pull tricks like that.
Ice HQ, that's an interesting last click from the wage workers. I do want to call some attention to the double upgrade on HQ.
Yeah, I was about to ask, what do you think that is?
Well, there are a bunch of upgrades in Styx's deck. We see 2 copies of the Hollow Man, 2 copies of Navarus. We do see Trine Grid as well. Of course, that's not a legal upgrade to put on HQ. Notably, 0 copies of... Oh, yeah, of course, 2 Metagam Scampers, very classic in Hasbirate decks modernly. But notably, 0 copies of Prism Grid, and I think this is an important call-out because Sebastian K, in true Sebastian K fashion, has spent 10 of his 15 influence on 2 copies of Diversion of Funds.
Wow.
That explains it. So
that last fully op going off there.
There's the fully op, yeah.
Maybe explains why we got that brand res. We have 8 credits just straight back.
Yeah, likely a Managam on HQ to protect against potential diversion. And I would guess also a Hollow Man maybe hiding there, helped by the Managam to stick around until he's needed for some scoring. But still 0 points for Mr. Styx, so this is playing the long plan here.
Yeah. And unless there are any more like Project Retruvus shenanigans. Ooh, we're clicking through this actually.
That's very sweet. And we'll have enough to steal an Ikora, I suppose, if we need to. Reza Spin Doctor. So this was quite a committal run from Seb K, although I suppose Urban Vernissage will bounce back this Peaches out.
Yeah, but it's a large portion of your turn to make this check on what turns out to have Spin Doctor, and not to mention the credits for the Hagen break. So, yeah, a pretty reasonable exchange for Styx here.
Although I can't imagine Seb K is worried too much about money with that ENV testing with 3 counts on it set at the top of the table.
Good spot.
And interesting to me where Seb K here on the Conduit plan. That's something you haven't seen out of Shaper too much in the previous meta. And especially with Peaches out, my initial instinct would be to guess that we were playing Deep Dive, but if Conduits are win condition, I suppose Peaches out still does a lot of work if you're running the same server multiple times.
Yeah, I suppose it also works well with diversion of funds, right? If you can keep the court poor either by landing the diversions or forcing them to commit resources to HQ, then you get to drop your Conduit and run R&D a whole bunch. But yeah, that game plan doesn't seem to have quite worked out here. And in fact, we see a diversion of funds discarded by Seb K. So yeah, well respected by Mr. Styx and defended against successfully, it would seem.
I mean, you speak about running like a certain server a whole bunch. I mean, observing right here that R&D has 12 cards in it, and there's still 14 agenda points, somewhere. And I am wondering if Seb K is thinking about like re-pivoting back onto R&D at some point.
Yeah, Seb's going to have to get busy scoring or get busy losing here, or Styx's rather.
With 3 fully up... Oh no, we used the Spin Doctor to shuffle back 1 fully up. So unless you have that in hand, you've got to feel like this 4th remote server feels a little strange. What do you think you might be installing there?
Oof, I don't know. You're the ASA player, Jai. What's your read?
They're putting me on the spot here. Just judging by what's been trashed already in archives, I would expect that server 6 is probably something like a powers that be, something you want the utility from. but don't necessarily want clogging your what I would take to be your main quote unquote scoring server in server one. Uh, but it looks that Sebastian K doesn't seem that interested in contesting it this turn. I possibly made the same read that we have, but Sticks not taking the opportunity to score here with the space that Sepke has been giving him, but just a triple install, triple credit with a double install of the. So yeah, and this does look like the this scoring push.
And you are right, we are pivoting there to the R&D. We know we've got the Peach Sound hand, and that can come down clicklessly for Arasana. So there could be a lot of runs on R&D here.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of an MU issue, but that self-modifying code can exchange itself for a 1MU program whenever needed, so shouldn't be a problem. The ablative, though, Mr. Sticks also has some tricks for this run.
And it looks like we are installing a Mavirus in server 1.
Keep that conduit down.
Keep the conduit down. But this is currently, this server, we're looking at 3 credits to break. Mr. Sticks may not be able to afford to res much more, and we do see the Peach Cell coming from hand. The 1 counter propeller in the bin to make that work seems very reasonable. Something that can now also be flickered with Simulchip to be brought back if there is a hefty ice res here.
Yeah, if we get yet another brand.
Although I suppose if we're planning on running this server multiple times per turn, that may not be ideal. And we do use the server.
Getting an Euler here. That's interesting, considering we haven't seen any code gates yet.
Yeah, and a strange timing. Like there wasn't necessarily a need to on that board state, unless, right. So it's a 5 credit server, and you'll gain your click back. We're going to see 1 card off the top for this first access and trash it. Play the show gamble, and we are just running back. This won't cost us with the conduit. This won't cost us any clicks. Essentially, we'll get that refunded by Peach Sal.
Yeah, it should go back to hand
and
here as
there's
well.
been 2 fresh cards unless Mr. Sticks wants to pop that Mavirus.
And that is a difficult proposition to spend 3 credits to deny a single access.
Yeah, I mean, like best case here, there are still 4 agendas in R&D.
And that's
There's one of them.
Oh, that's one of them. That's GG.
Congratulations to both players. Very well played.
Okay, I think we now have most, if not all, of the results from the round.
Do you want to summarise what we've got? I might be able to switch us back over to the Cobra tab and take a look.
I'm seeing a lot of runner wins to start with. Not sure if they've been input yet. Yeah, so on top of those results we see there, we just saw Seb K win as runner as well. Oh, it's about even though, runner and corp wins, it would seem. Notably, we have our reigning Circuit Breaker losing its first round.
And that's Tuno, first seed player, losing to 16th seed Daigen. So I can't remember all of the pairings, but obviously half of these players got to pick which side they were going to play. And
I do believe, just by my rough once over of the pairings, that I believe 5 of the 8 higher seeded players chose to play their runner deck.
Okay.
We saw Amarum in that round winning as runner, of course, and as well as I believe Sebastian K got to pick side as well.
I'm receiving word from our excellent TO Craw that there is still a bit of a display bug on Cobra at the moment, so the letters we are seeing may not actually reflect which side was won with. In fact, as we can see on table 1, Daejeon did win that game, but as Corp, not as R.
And yeah, we also see wins from Not Again. We saw the win from Amarum. We see wins from Jonald. We see a win from Pouch of Lavender and a win from Kikai. So yeah, and we've only one more game to report. Did we want to cut to a break and go for round 2?
Yeah, happily.
By all means. Yeah, let's do it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for watching that first round with us. We'll be back with you in
5 or 10 minutes.
5 or 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back to round 2 of day 2 of the Circuit Breaker Invitational. Just before we get into the game, we wanted to quickly take a look at the decks that we're going to be seeing. We are seeing Kikai playing Hashiko, and this is a different Hashiko than the one we saw in round 1. We saw a kind of mulch style Hashiko in round 1, and this is a kind of like newish brew. It's fairly reg, but that console is Anacam, and we're running some kind of crew Amakua. We've seen a lot of this in the last year, often playing Patchwork, but this feels a new fresh. It's got things like Eye for an Eye, and a couple of other kind of like surprise includes, and of course because it's Kikai, he is playing at least one card that is highly suspect, and that is Tread Lightly. I say this, he's a good friend. And then on the opposite side of this, Kikai would play against Pouch of Lavender's Ob deck, which is kind of that pretty classic facet style. We're seeing Eminent Domains for archers, but we're seeing it out of Ob with a lot of an ability to kind of just produce a hollow man out of nowhere and get to 5 points. There are, I think, 2 really interesting things about this one. One, we've cut an Azef protocol to play a slash and burn, which is really interesting. I think Azef is a really, really strong utility piece for Ob a lot of the time, and missing that is going to be interesting. And also, we have no copies of Audacity, so that slash and burn is our way of closing the game out fast. What I'll do. Do you guys have any other thoughts on the decks, on the matchup?
Yeah, just to say that the Hashiko deck is based on a deck that was played at the New Year's Showdown by Torpedo Tyrus and OF15. OF15 came second with it, I believe, at that tournament. It's pretty impressive, and it famously plays Eye for an Eye, a card from Rebellion Without Rehearsal that has seen little to no tournament play since its release a little under a year ago. But OF15 took it to second place at a large tournament. And Kikai has brought it as well, although he's cut it down to just 1 copy in the deck.
Yeah, and really the interaction that you're looking at there is the synergy with Copulation, a card as well that really has kind of rocketed up throughout the whole of last meta, and we're seeing a lot of play. And especially it was seeing play in these crew Hosh decks. And essentially, Eye for an Eye doesn't just let you trash 1 or 2 cards when you're doing access. You can trash every single card you access. So if you have additional multi-access, you can trash the entire hand. And I've seen Kikai do it multiple times in the last week.
Yeah, but you do have to trade your cards for theirs. So if you have a Steelskin Scarring to get you up on cards while you're doing it, generally much more effective.
And also with the Anacam and with the Largo Shelter, it's quite easy for Kikai to start his turn with 8-9 cards in hand. So all of that very much worth considering. It's not a silver bullet, and especially can feel, I think, a little painful in those matchups where you're naturally tagged, or you might end up tagged by the corporation. We did some practice for the NEH matchup, which Kikai won in round 1, and yeah, Eye for an Eye can be pretty tricky to play in that matchup sometimes. So there are drawbacks, but yeah, it's doing a lot. Right, I'm going to switch us over to the game as our players are now starting. And as we see here, a mulligan from Pouch of Lavender and a keep from Kikai. And I say we're off to the races, but we're having a think after our match.
It's a classic Ob turn 1. You've got a lot to think about already with this deck a lot of the time.
Yeah, and you're a big Ob player, isn't that right, Cobra Bubbles?
Yeah, I've played some Ob in my time. It's one of my favourite network cards of all time, I would say, as it is for many people. Very versatile, very powerful identity that somehow still produces decks that are often like right on the edge of not quite being good enough. But as we said at the start of the stream, a lot of Obs winning in the first weekend of the CBI. Well represented here. And yeah, Pouch of Lavender, no slouch, going undefeated, I think, and coming out on top of the pod that they played it.
I'm not sure if that's quite right, but did an absolutely amazing performance in the EMEA Swiss, I believe, where both of these players came from. And we see turn 1, it's draw, install, and then over to Kikai, who's similarly drawing. It feels like it's a slightly frosty, slightly tense start to to the match, and we see a Maryland campaign on the table. It's an interesting one.
Imagine.
It does a lot of work out of Ob, but it is a 3-credit trash.
I mean, I think if you're Kikai, I mean, depending on the contents of the rest of your hand, maybe you have some bounce back with strike funds and so on. But I would be tempted to trash an Unrest Marinade out of Op any chance I get. Yeah, it looks like that's what we'll be seeing here. Mystic Miami and a Barnhart coming down.
Very nice. It's a card that recurs itself whilst giving you the Ob trigger. It shoves itself back into the deck, meaning that you can just keep getting those Ob triggers to tutor for your 1-costers. And Pouch of Lavender is playing a lot of 1-costers compared to some of the other Facet decks. We have notably a card that will be very important in the matchup against Kikai, 1 Wraparound, which against these Anarchs, many of whom aren't playing the Reg Breaker Suite, or at the very least aren't planning on installing it off the mat, will be really, really effective. I think Kikai will be worried about that wraparound. But the Banhart is going to exert a lot of pressure on this early game, and the main meal is going to help a lot of money. Click 1, we've installed and res the Spin Doctor. 7 cards in hand, and
we're cooking, yeah. 7 cards is a lot of options in an Ob deck, when presumably like any one of those cards plus an extract can turn into any other 1 card in your deck. So even with just 2 clicks left this turn, there's a lot to think about here. Speaking of Pouch's Ice Suite, I'll be interested to see how that plays out in the game based on where Kikai chooses to commit his resources. So what are you using Crew on? What are you using Devil Charm on? Because there are multiple archers here, so if an archer gets fetched off an eminent domain, that's a prime target to get Devil Charm crewed. But if you waste all your Devil Charms killing archers and other large things, and then just the lowly wraparound behind something else to protect it from Bankar could cause real trouble for the Amakua plan here. So yeah, really interested to see how this ice plays out.
This ice on the Spin Doctor is interesting to me. There are a couple of implications that spring to mind over here. Firstly, that if Pouch of Lavender is so interested in protecting the Spin Doctor, that could mean that there's some kind of audacity, or I should say more like slash and burn, right? Slash and burn fast advance play coming down. Maybe if with an above the law to try and snipe a Banha.
That would be a pretty strong, I think, and fairly aggressive line at this point. But
there's also the possibility of expending the eminent domain instead, a lesser seen play, but to get us off the ground economically here, we might want to expend to get a different ice into play potentially. But we do have a server 3 install.
And Jaya, looks like you called it exactly right. And we see that slash and burn.
Pause here suggests Azef. Yeah.
That's an Azef protocol, right?
Trashing that ice that we used to protect the spin.
And hits the crew out of hand. That's a pretty nice hit there for Pouch.
A crew and a dirty laundry.
Definitely cards that Kikai would have much rather kept. Although you can think of it as, the crew traded for the ice anyway, just in a different fashion,
And neither of you paid any credits for the exchange, yeah. Interesting. Okay, so we know there's an agenda face up in archives, but there's also 2 other face down cards. This Spin Doctor ready to protect it, but Kikai is probably looking to make a run this turn, get that Hashiko flip.
And the archives run looks quite appealing for multiple reasons, of course, right? Getting the Spin Doctor pop and the slash and burn shuffled back. Your leech counter, of course. Oh, and a second dirty laundry coming down.
Very, very nice for Kikai there. I think when I saw the first one go from hand, I was a little worried. Mamie has a habit of punching you in the face, I feel, a bit with this Hashiko deck. It can be difficult to get all of your value from it, but fortunately we got that there.
Well, so much for the leech counter, though.
There is a Mavirus.
We do see the Mavirus in archives, but again, on a pretty profitable archives run, now's a good time to find out that is there. Oh, and that leech going away completely to get the SDS of R&D. Not bad at all.
So that's immediately probably started to soothe Kikai's nerves a little bit, getting behind that early. And I played against some of these obs over the last two tournaments I've played in, and it is just impressive how quickly they can go from 2 points to 5 points, 5 points to 7 points. It really can kind of come out of you out of nowhere. So just being able to stay up on points is really good and important.
Yeah, although I would say that this orb is not presenting a lot of economic development in the early game. We've not resolved that early Marilyn, we've not drawn a hedge fund or another kind of econ card. So we're running on fumes really here, which is going to make it quite difficult to present those real scoring threats in the near future.
Yeah, Hollow Man, very powerful card, very expensive card.
Yeah.
I mean, you speak about economy and I think it's a very interesting topic and maybe a bit too large in scope for just a regular cast. But I noticed that many ops, not all of them, I think notably Benvelopment is still playing the Regolith mining license, but not many other op players are opting for the Regolith these days, more for the Marylands and Sweetagors, etc., etc. And do you think that's what's causing all the economic knockoff effects?
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
We get to resolve Rashida.
We get the Rashida here, which is the most important card for Ob, I would say, in the game. Because Wayland just doesn't have any card draw in faction, so you get an influence-free way to draw cards that you can search for with Ob, and that makes you some money along the way. Very powerful, obviously, in every card.
Wall to wall's a card.
Wall to wall is, I guess, a card. Yeah, it doesn't quite do the thing you want when you're trying to go fast. But yeah, I mean, the Ob ID is economy in itself, right? When you trash your border control to get a 3-cost card, not only is that put a card on the table, but it's also giving you 3 credits because you res that card for free.
And more if you're installing it further out,
Yep, and you could save on install costs and all sorts. So yeah, it's actually secretly an ID that gives you a lot of credits. The problem is you need to get your first face-up card to start chaining from, which can be a really hard thing to do against, for example, Araceris Crew, a runner card that can just trash a face-up card as soon as it sees one. So yeah, it's getting Ob Econ off the ground can sometimes be tricky, but usually step one is resolve Rashida, and we've done that here, so that feels pretty good.
And we're drawing up with 9 cards in hand now. You wonder if what decisions we're trying to make. We know that there's good odds without installing extra ice that Kikai can get into most servers, and so really a border control could stop that, but not much else. So you've got to wonder about server 5 and what is, if you've got a Genesis HQ, where can they go?
I mean, given that click one draw archives is probably the correct answer to that question.
Yeah, that was kind of my guess. We get that Mamie value. We're looking to make a Hashiko run this turn. I think Kikai, from the times I played with him, is quite strict about getting that Hashiko flip up, flip down, which I like to see.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into the trap of staying on Mahu Shoujo, the backside of Hashiko, losing a lot of credits. You draw a lot of cards, you get through your deck, but you've got Anakam in play, you're going to be drawing those cards anyway. If you do have the time, as Kikai has here, to take a couple of turns off and flip down, keeps your econ a bit more well balanced.
See that compilation. And now, importantly, it's very likely, I think, that Kikai is looking to cups them a virus out of archives. It would be a bit aggressive on this board state, given that we do still have other open centrals. But yeah, we are doing it. And what that means is that's a card that can't get shuffled back in, but also, importantly, is going to give Kikai fairly safe centrals runs for a lot of the game, so that he can build up those Amakua counters, build up those leech counters, and really stop it being too disrupted. Svetagor resident in the right side. I love this card. This is one of those cards for a long time we didn't see a lot of play in Ob, and I think Kikai will be disappointed to see that Mavaris going into archives there. But what 2-coster do you think we're fetching? It's a Maryland campaign.
Very reasonable.
We won't get credits off of that this turn, but we will next.
You will say that it is true that not great to see the second Mavaris hit archives immediately after the first gets cupped out of it, but worth noting that Ultra Lavender only has 2 copies of the card.
Oh, really?
In the deck. Yeah, so I think Kikai will be somewhat pleased to have located both of them this early in the game.
Yeah, there's very little chance of mid-run virus, which is when you're most worried about it.
Yeah, and we're down 2 spin doctors as well, so there's only one more to put it back in if that's what Pouch decides to do. Oh, we get the armed asset protection. So this is an econ card, speaking of econ, that, yeah, not widely played at all. But works as a 2-cost hedge fund here for +6 credits.
It's interesting. This card came out in the last set, I believe, or it might be in the first half of Liberation.
Was in
With that Nuvum theming, and obviously Nuvum puts cards in archives. Feels good, but often I find when playing Nuvum, it's difficult to get face-up cards in archives, which is what this cares about. Whereas with Ob, it's a much easier deal a lot of the time to get that money. And we are jamming something in this remote server and icing up. So unless Kikai has something else up his sleeve, Pouch of Lavender is going to be able to protect whatever is in this server.
Yeah. Over installing the Sweeter Gold, that's not something we see every day.
No, but with the Marilyn ticking, we might be thinking that we're okay for money.
Yeah, and if you have a window to resolve an eminent domain,
you just take it.
You try and take it, especially against a deck like this, which is going to be contesting your ice quite often.
So yeah, Kikai really will have some decisions to make here. If we're going to have any chance of flipping down, it's going to give a lot of tempo to the corp, who's kind of trying to get away with something. But if we don't have the answers to the questions that Ob's answering, maybe the right thing to do is just to sit back and money up. And it's interesting. It is an interesting board state.
So, of course, there isn't really a lethal Banha face check on this current board state. There's 0 copies of, I believe, 0 copies of Envelopment in this particular op deck. Although it's worth noting that Archer is visible on this board state, and it will sting. It will definitely sting for Kikai if he's going to Banha face check into that.
Although I think that losing 2 points is probably not a cost that Pouch of Lavender will be paying lightly.
Absolutely.
Janet there giving us a slightly disco-themed Sphetical Excavator in the bin. It's flashing around. And we see...
There it is!
Oh, I insulted it at the start of the game and I've already been proven...
This is a pretty hot trend, Lily, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think Pouch is going to be able to double res on this server unless it's like a border control.
Yeah, I'd say, but a 7 credit border control probably feels alright.
Yeah, sadly, it doesn't work for Orb and let you fetch a 6-coster. Yeah, that's quite jammy of Kikai here to just manage to find the very unlikely situation in the matchup where Ob has 2 ice on a server and neither of them are resed. But fair play to him. It's paying off this last influence that he spent of the Sushika deck.
We love to see it. And we get in. We're just getting in. Wow.
Yeah, there's eminent domain. Right.
Now, Mystic Mamie is still threatening to throw a tantrum. Are they like children, the companions?
No, they're like, I guess they're like soft AI, some kind. They're video game characters, right?
They're NPCs.
Yeah.
They're your Final Fantasy party.
Yeah, in before the NPC meme became a thing.
Yeah, I didn't mean it like that. That was a good point. Yeah.
And they will take a chunk out of you or your board, depending if they are left unsatisfied for too long.
Okay, so we are
Raindrop
Raindrops in HQ. Resing the Ice Wall. I think Kikai absolutely fine with that.
Yeah.
Would you go after his Marilyn here with your last click if you were Kikai?
Depends a lot on what's
I-
in HQ, but he
Would
does.
be very tempted to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't play amazingly well with the HQ run because you could have had Ob start the turn on no resed cards at all, so you turn off extract value lines, but as it is, just the 1 cost means the options for extracting are pretty limited here. And yeah, getting rid of the Marilyn closes down a lot of lines that Pouch might have had.
1 Spin Doctor, 1 Rashida left in the deck.
Yeah, I was gonna say even so,
One
like
excavator.
just having this ice wall rest is good for Pouch Lavender, like in terms of extract value, but what you're extracting to is a different story entirely. I do suppose that given the option, she would like to extract this into like the last Rashida, possibly.
Yeah, but it
Like,
very much depends what's in HQ. It
yeah,
won't be
absolutely.
providing a great deal of protection against this Banha, but again, Kikai may be looking to flip down next turn. Um, you may just be able to get away with some stuff. The wonderful thing I find about playing against Toshiko is that you have that slightly telegraphed thing. What do I think they're going to do on the next turn? How do I think they're going to try and extract as much value as possible from their ID? Which, since the banning of DreamNet several years ago, has, I think, made Hishiko a really interesting ID both to play against and as. Other people's mileage may vary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on this one, but as we've said, there are many loose stands out there.
Yeah.
Let's make sure their voices are represented. We've got another jam in server 5 here, so the tread lightly is gone, so you don't have to respect it anymore, at least.
Yeah.
It does go, put the Banha on server 5 here. Of course, he had the option to get a 3-card sweep of HQ with the calculation on the if he Banha it as well, but this is what he's going with.
Now,
I presume that he doesn't expect this run to be successful anyway.
but you could see yourself drawing a lot of cards.
Yeah, that's probably what he's after.
And it
Wraparound,
looks like
right?
it will be successful.
But we found the wraparound, and it does have something in front of it for future pushes to protect it from Banker.
Right. Cards an eye for an eye to the Banha damage, so he did have the option of going for like a full HQ sweep.
Yeah, losing the eye for an eye is probably a little sad. Accessing the tranquility, that's very interesting. 4 credits to deny this trank? Hard to say.
I think I would. In this position, you're about to get 3 credit refund from your raindrops.
True.
And 2 cards, I believe, because of Zanicam already happened because of the net damage.
Has already happened, yes.
Yeah, but anyway, a decent refund here, and that trank grid can really carry. I mean, we see it with precision design all the time. It can really carry any corp that's looking to jam a lot in their remote through the whole game, and yeah, Kikai respecting it here.
Yeah, so without an Arasaris crew, this wraparound will be a problem for Kikai. Stealing another Eminent off the top. This Mystic Mamie refuses to behave.
It's extremely insistent little companion, and looks like will be trashing something.
It hits the steel skin, we get the card draw.
Wow.
Never punished.
Look at that titanium ripped gold.
And yeah, with the crew charm, we now have an answer to that wraparound. We can Banha our way in there, potentially, if it's not a board control. What do you think that outer ice is to not have been rezzed twice now?
It's a really tough one. I mean, I don't know that you res it to protect the trank. Like,
true.
Often, as Ob, you're looking to get some things rezzed to be your extract targets, but keep your like powerful run-ending options, like your Stavkas, your border controls, available for until later in the game. And especially if this is a Stavka, for example, you don't really want to res it to get it bank card. You'd rather have something in front of it first to make that happen. And to make a more impactful card than Trank Grid stick. But yeah, this server's now looking quite vulnerable with the Charm, Crew and Bankar together. You need to put together quite a lot of tools to keep Kikai out here.
Especially since, as we've talked about, we now know the location of where both Navaruses in the deck are. Like, if there was a third, potentially there was a way to force a remote lockout on any given turn that Portrait Lavender wanted. But in this particular scenario, there's no way to like force the leech counters off mid-run. Yeah. So this means that this crew charm will go through on wraparound.
And we see a draw, install for Pouch there. Hashiko, meaning that Kikai is going to start his turn on 0 credits. And the Sure Gamble is going to solve that. Mystic maybe.
That felt good.
Yeah,
lucky not to lose that gamble to the Mamie damage last turn.
Or lucky to have drawn it off the...
Yeah, I mean, if that's a rip-off of Hashiko, Kikai continues to have a pretty jammy game here.
But I mean, Kikai's drawn 3 cards since the end of his last turn with the Steel Skin hit. It's crazy. Sorry, it's a... like quite wild how many cards that you can end up drawing.
Yeah, the velocity in this deck is really impressive. You just turn over cardboard.
And do you take a
when
tag
anything
here
happens.
to get into this server? Well, look, are we using a leech counter and the Devil Charm?
Devil Charm Crew trades for wraparound as predicted, so that's one less Devil Charm to use for archers if that should come up later.
Access the above door and win the game.
Big move from Pouch there, just saying you won, but Kikai did. And,
Kikai very
so
credit
good.
poor at the end of that turn.
Yeah, I mean could have struggled if it wasn't for that sure gamble. So
Kikai, I spoke to a lot during the week, and I know that this was a matchup that he was quite concerned about going into the tournament. So we'll be feeling all right there. Cobra was just going to look for another game for us to jump over into. What are your thoughts at the end of that, Jai?
I think this really demonstrates the power of the companions in terms of being able to quickly react to changing board states. And this Banha card, what a card.
Well, one of my absolute favourite netrunner cards of all time. I am a big Banha fan.
Yeah, it did seem like Ultra Lavender's deck, unfortunately, was as you say, wasn't really able to get off the ground in the first few turns of the game. We only managed to see one Rashida fire, and after that with the unbased protection, that was basically it. I don't even know if the Sphetogor Excavator got any fires for value, which is a little bit of a shame. But other than that, yeah, well played to both players, and congratulations to Kikai for punching. I believe this would be a ticket to the top 6 of the CBI.
That is correct. And we're going to swing down. We're going to head over to another Hashiko Ob matchup. But quite different. Both decks quite different from the ones we've seen in the previous round, and the board state also looking quite different. We see Davs 131 playing this Molt Hashiko, quite set up. We see the twinning of a counter. We've got the Buffer Drive, a card that, from my understanding, was laughed out of the room for a lot of its lifetime in Standard, but has really found its home in these Anarch decks. Against Biblam, who is playing this Rush Ob, and is gonna score an Azef fetching a border control. So 4 points for Davs, 3 points for Biblam.
Yeah, we joined during a dramatic moment here of the Azef score fetching a border control off of an envelopment.
And crashing 2 breakers there.
Yeah.
And hitting 2 breakers, yeah, interesting. And now we still have a Tucana trigger to resolve.